All right. I'm gonna make a little tier list here. I've been putting it off until I had enough information about what I thought. I've been doing a lot of games on stream. Doing A to Z basically of every guardian, every mage, every warrior, every hunter. Trying to figure out what I think is good and trying to figure out what does well on the new map, especially with the new walls, the new invades, the new objectives, the new style, the new game length, etc., etc. And I think I've got a bit more of a better idea now where I can give you a rough estimate of what we're looking at least for this patch. And this will change depending on what comes out in 10.2, but for 10.1, this will be the up to date version for sure. So I'm just gonna start off straight away with Maui. Maui for me is uncontested number one support in the game right now. Not even close. For me, there's a few indicators, which is, do they have pressure early game? Yes. Does he scale well late game? Yes. Is he safe? Yes. Does he require blink? No. For me, those are the big ones. The reason why going blink for me is a big thing that you'll hear a lot in this tier list is because going blink means that you're very reliant on a cooldown, and it means that you're not allowed to go meditation, sunder, bracer, stuff like that, where relics that really allow you to play the style you want to. Blink forces you into a certain playstyle, so blink odds for me will be a lot lower than maybe even other supports will put them. For me, I just don't find them valuable, and they drop down in that case. Anyway, that's why Maui's good. He's got great team play, great damage, very good early game, can get a lot of kills, can force beads. You can save people, you can engage. Really good god all around. And there's not really anything wrong with him. The only thing with Maui that he has some rough matchups into, which is into gods like Terra that can place their walls down and not get pulled by his ult. But that's pretty much it. Otherwise, he's a very good character with no real downsides. Just make sure you don't whiff the ult, otherwise it looks a bit embarrassing. Yeah, so Maui number one for me by far. If it was an SST, he'd be in there on his own. Next up is Khepri. I played Khepri a lot last year in comp, and I played him quite a bit in ranked as well. He's usually pretty good with a high clearing ADC. The problem with Khepri this year is that they've made all the maps, all the walls a lot tighter, and that doesn't matter for a lot of gods, but with Khepri having the biggest hitbox in the game, outside of ultimates, it means he can get body blocked in a lot, man. There are a lot of war gods right now that are good. There are a lot of characters that can block you in, and Khepri just gets blocked in everywhere. The one redeeming quality that he has is that he scales very well late game, and with lack of objectives, it means usually you get there if you don't get snowballed over. He's probably a C god. I don't think he's D. I think he has got some sort of playability. He doesn't require blink. He's fairly safe as well. So, and also I think he does pretty well with like items like Absolution, for example, the CC immunity one. If you're against an Ares, you can cleanse yourself. Stuff like that. He's probably better than last year, but again, I wouldn't rate him too much higher than. But he's definitely lower than last year, but I wouldn't rate him much higher than C. Next up is Umoja. So Umoja is a weird one because, again, he's very dependent on how well you can play her. Now, I'd say that the itemization, especially with the items like Prophetic Cloak, which they should be on the screen somewhere if I'm editing correctly, with the extra CDR from that as well, and the Chronos Pendant buff, which is a very good item for her, even for noob and new players. Very good for Umoja. I would argue she's an S, but I can see why she'd be an A as well. If you haven't learned Umoja, I'd recommend learning her. She's very, very good. Very few counters. You just sometimes have to go beads, which is similar to Blink. You don't want to, but a kit's so valuable that it doesn't really matter that much. I recommend right now going Sentinels, Prophetic Cloak into an item like Chronos Pendant, and then you can go for something like a Magi's. She is fantastic with CD. It makes it easy to play, and it means you can just abuse people. She's probably second overall, but again, a big drop off from Maui just because she hasn't got CC immunity. Sobek got a nice little buff on his ultimate. He's a lot faster, a lot safer. I'm not a Sobek player, so I'm biased here, but I don't think he's much higher than B. The problem with Sobek is that he's great in laning phase, but when it comes to mid-game, if you go against players that know how to bead the pluck, you are just dead. Let's say you go for a blink pluck on an ADC, they beads it, you get Khepri plucked, you get Terra stoned, you get Maui wand. You have to reaction ult, and then you're trading your ult for a beads, best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you get CC chain and you're dead. The be-all end-all is that supports this year have a lot less early windows to fight because junglers come over earlier with the new starts and the new timings on camps. So, and then mid-game there's no objectives to fight over, so you're kind of walking around the jungle, and if no one's giving you an opportunity, then late game you're not really that good of a god. Like Sobek, definitely not that good of a god. He has to go blink really to be good late game and try and knock carries up and stuff, but even then, just very, very mediocre. So I'm putting him in B. Just because he's safe, quite easy to play, and can engage with his pluck without blink. Next up is Cabrakian. I am not a big fan of Kraken. I'd put him along the lines of Sobek. The only reason why I wouldn't put him lower or higher is just because, again, he is arguably blink reliant, which for me is obviously a big downside. But he does do a lot of damage, and he has got a wall, and his wall is low cooldown. Actually, maybe it's not cooldown anymore. Actually, maybe it's 90 seconds. It was 75 though. Either way, Kraken's got a really good CC chain with his undiarable burst ability, which means you can lock someone up with just the CC chain. This matters a lot more this year because of the class set bonuses, which means that every Guardian gets, I think it's 10% CCR late game, maybe up to 15%. So every Guardian just naturally getting locked down for less amount of time, which makes the undiarable CC more valuable. Definitely good early game, good at the 3 camp start, good for engaging. And again, the smaller the walls are, the better wall ultimates are, just because you're more likely to block people in and trap people and group them together and such with the windy paths. So Kraken definitely a B, definitely a fine god. I'd argue he's a counterpick god. He gets picked into gods like, there was a meta this year in SPL, Cupid. Kraken a great example into Cupid, for example. And Ganesh, gods like that, where you can activate your 1 and be slow immune. Fantastic. Against Cupid specifically, a really good god. And that was a thing last year. Also against Freya as well, just because of the one's really good at locking Freya in and forcing her ult as well. So Freya quite prominent right now as well in ranked, at least for me in my North American Masters and above games. Next was Ares. Okay, Ares is going to be an A, but it's going to be an asterisk because Ares is either horrible or broken. He's not the same as Yamodra and Maui, who are more consistent. Ares is a god where if you pick him first and they pick 5 gods of CC immunity, unless you get first blood, he's going to feel terrible. But if they pick Agni, Hunbats, Kernanos, Terra, you're going to feel great. Ares got no changes. The Prophetic Cloak is not good on him. He is still a god where you go Sentinels into Thebes, into Sov. He does require Blink, but he is the best speeds forcing support in the game. And he has got great aura, and he has got great CC and bloody great damage as well. So he's definitely A. He's a good round all support, but very immobile. That's why I recommend if you check out my build guide, support guide, which is down below. I've got the Ares build there. Again, Sentinels, Thebes, Sov into Spirit's Robe. You kind of need to go that build on him, in my opinion. Blink first, and then you can kind of go anything second. But he's a very weird character. Picks and bans dependent entirely. But when he's good, and he's usually fine. But he really shines when it's a good game for Ares for sure. Next up is Atlas. I am not a huge fan of Atlas. He floats between these two for me. He's probably a B because he's got a lot of damage. Now, Atlas's one redeeming quality is his 3 and his ultimate. His 1 and his 2 are very mediocre. They're not that good at all. His passive is fine. It's basically like Archdruid's proc, where it does damage based on how much damage you receive. His damage is okay. He's got 4 damaging abilities and a damage passive. He does a lot of damage, that's fine, but most Guardians do. Especially when you're building Divine, which I recommend in every build almost. You're ahead. Again, so Atlas is 3 and ult reliant. The problem with his 3 is that it cures or cleanses slows. Like, for example, if Ganesh ults and you 3 your team, you cleanse the slows, and then your team gets a speed boost from it. The problem with that is Wingblade got changed this patch to provide slows to all your teammates as an aura now. So basically his 3's been put on an item, and it's a very cheap item. It's 1850 gold. So what's the point of Atlas? This is ult, basically. That's it. He's very good. It's very good in narrow pathways. It's guaranteed to hit. You build the Van in him, he'll do a lot of damage, but he's just not that good. The problem with him is he's no CC immunity, and his CC is quite short-ranged, or no CC at all, which is just not very mediocre. He's B, though. Just because you can carry if you go a bruiser item on him, a bruiser build, like a damage item or 2, you can solo carry with the correct relics, but I just don't think he's that good overall. Fafnir is going to be a C god. I want to put him lower, but the thing about Fafnir is sometimes you do just win games with a double hunter. Fafnir and Khepri are very similar to me, where they both require a high clearing ADC to feel good. Khepri being better than Fafnir, of course. Fafnir is a good prophetic cloak god, that's for sure. And the passive the stacks you get from your passive give you a lot of prots. He's very tanky. The issue with Fafnir, the reason why he's lower than last year, where I would have put him in B or something, maybe even higher, is there's less objectives on the map. This year they just removed cups, scorpions, milking, Pyro's delayed. They made Fire Giant harder. They made Gold Fury harder with the pit changes. So Fafnir just falls off in that regard. There might be some sort of siege meta coming on in terms of where you push a lot of towers and then Fafnir gets better. But really, without the milking, where you could milk safely with your jump, I don't think he's that good. He kind of is very mediocre. His CC, his 1's very mediocre. His 2 is a decent damage buff, but there's so much damage in the game right now anyway. It's almost overkill. You'd rather have more utility for your support than damage increase because there's already so much in the game. So Fafnir C, low pressure, not very good at all. The next up is Artio. Artio, again, used to be a bit of a pub stompy god. I would put her in A last year because she was great in the mid game at brawling junglers. Now, the problem this year is they've buffed junglers massively. They've given speed buff an extra 5% movement speed. They've made the camp timers longer. And they've made junglers just roam a lot more. And now the issue with that is that Artio relies on engaging on junglers first. But if junglers are always the ones rotating on the map, they're the ones kind of setting the pace of the game. And Artio feels very bad. And if she doesn't go blink, then she can't ever engage late game. She has a shitty route. If she doesn't go beads, then she can die anytime she wants. Think about all his character. Maui ult, Artio's dead. Yamoja 3, Artio's dead. Ares ult, Artio's dead. You know, and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. So Artio really wanted to abuse that early mid-game kind of sphere, and that's kind of just gone now. I haven't really found anything that's good on her. She's fine with Cloak, I suppose, but really not that good of God anymore. She kind of lost it. The reason why she's not higher than these three, is because these guys actually have damage and CC. All she has is a bit of pressure, but she doesn't even scale as well as these gods. She's probably the worst scaling god out of all these lots. So that's why Artio is in C for me. Next up is Kumba. Kumba's going to win D for sure. So Kumba got a buff this patch where his 2 now cripples for 2 seconds, which is a good buff. Bloody great buff, actually. I found personally that it doesn't really matter too much. The problem with Kumba is that he is blink reliant, which we don't like. We don't like in this channel. He has a very weak early game. His 2 is a short cooldown of 10 seconds, but it's very, very slow to get off. He usually gets interrupted. You usually take a bunch of damage dealing it and using it. And then his 1 is just awful. His 1 doesn't provide any CC, it's just mobility. Think about every other support. I mean, Artio dash slows. Kumba 1 knocks back minions. Doesn't even do anything. It's just a worse Gilga 2. His Mez is usually pretty good, but again, blink reliant. His passive is very, very bad. Very rarely are you going to be getting your full passive off. I mean, 1 in 10 times are you going to be lived from a passive in a real game. He might be good against Double Hunter. They removed items like Witchblade, so I guess anti-attack speed is less prominent, which means Kumba kind of could be good in those situations. Unless you're against a Mercury and Double Hunter, I wouldn't recommend him ever. He's really very mediocre. Usually the build I go from is like Sentinels, Thebes. Again, he can't proc Cloak, so don't go Cloak. Thebes into Riot Dagger, and then you upgrade your Blink to tier 2, and you blink around, try and force speeds, try and ult people. But really not that good. Very low lane pressure, bad late game, bad mid game. Where does the god shine? You know, like when we're trying to think about a good god in Smite, you have to do something well or everything mediocre, and he doesn't do either of them. That's why I'm putting him in D. Bacchus is going in A. So Bacchus is basically the better version of Cabrakan and Atlas in regards to the amount of damage you have for a carry. He's not blink reliant like Cabrakan, but he's also more mobile than Atlas, and he does a lot more damage straight up as well. If you go on item like Divine, you're providing your team 100% anti-heal, and your ult does like 700 damage late game. He also got a buff where he heals now as well, and they also changed an item called Regrowth into Breastplate of Regrowth, which gives you movement speed whenever you won, which is insane. I think this god's very strong. Now, I'm not a Bacchus player, but if you get pressure and you run around and start fucking with people, they're not going to like it. If you go Thebes into, let's say, a Divine Ruin straight up, or a Thebes into Spirit's Robe into Divine Ruin, and then you go like Ankh and Horrific, you're going to be doing a lot of damage late game. He's a god that you can definitely solo carry on. He has a good start early with his 3 doing damage to minions. I think Bacchus is a very good god. Very friendly to players that are new to support. People that are like, for example, like Solon is trying to play support. Bacchus is probably more your style than Yamoja is. Strong all-round god that does a lot of damage. That's why I'm putting him in A for now. Next up, we have Horus. Okie dokie. Now, Horus is a weird one, again, because I don't think he's that good right now. No, well, there's 2 things. Let's talk about why I think he might be around here somewhere. So number one is they made a change to purple buff, which gives magical hunters basic attack damage, which is more valuable for them than it is for physicals. Which means the magical hunters are better, and we're seeing way more. I'm seeing, I don't know about you guys, you can say in the comments, but in my games at least, I'm seeing a lot of Cronoses, a lot of Souls, a lot of Olorans. Horus, physical, good with gods like that, because they can do objectives fast. So typically it's a very good combo with those gods. He also got Binding as well, which is now can be bought on physicals. His 2, his 1, good CC procs Binding. Very good tank kill. The problem with Horus always comes down to that if your game is interrupted, it doesn't feel that good. No, I think he's in B. But again, what I would say is that if you're not in Diamond and above games, people aren't going to trust you and your ult's useless. The reason why I'd say he's probably not any higher than, even though I've just said a bunch of good things about him, is purely because Horus relied on objectives. And now with Pyro being gone and milking and how fast you were for that, you're kind of losing like your sneakiness a little bit, because there's gold up for 10 minutes, for 14 minutes. Then Pyro spawns. Well, Pyro's kind of obvious because gold's probably done in the first 14. And then Fire Giant, well, it's not even that sneaky anymore. With the pit, you can't really sentry Fire Giant guaranteed. So it's very difficult to play Horus well in the new season. Now, he is good at pushing towers, so he might move up. If Tower Sieging becomes a thing, maybe he goes up. But now I'll leave him in B. Very reliant on teammates, but a good god overall. Ganesh is going in D. Straight up, Ganesh is not good. His 1 is terrible. His 2 is very mediocre. His 3 is awful. His passive is terrible unless you're stacking Thebes. And then it's useless. His ult is fantastic. His ult is broken. But then we talked about earlier an item called Wingblade. You build Wingblade against Ganesh. He can only proc the Wingblade with his ult. And if you proc it, so let's say I get Ganesh ulted in a cage. I'm trapped in, and all my team walks through, and I proc my Wingblade. Well, that's it. Ganesh ult gone. Wingblade ult being 30 seconds. Ganesh ult being a bit shorter at 75. But it's just you won't win a fight if you actually speed the enemies up off the Wingblade. I'm not even talking about anymore. We're done. Ganesh is bad. They need to change his 1 or his 3 for him to be good, in my opinion. Geb is going to go in C. I put a lot of Geb. I put 3 or 4 games, three or four games of Geb this season so far, and I think what I'm kind of noticing a little bit is that he's very blink reliant, very weak early game. Late game, we all know Geb can be good, especially with going on items such as Heroism, which is the upgrade from Compassion, from Benevolence, sorry. So rather than going the damage mitigation, you go the extra shield. Double shield, very strong. You can peel for a lot of carries. Very good against a lot of gods that are meta. Geb, good against crit like that. Good against Thanatos, because you can shield preemptively. Good against Darji. Good against Pele, because you can ult when shields. He is good, but he's very low pressure, very team reliant. If you can guarantee get to late game, well, Geb's an A. Geb's an A because he's blink reliant, but still up here. But again, just in C for now. I would still recommend picking him in against like a Mercury's, Darji's, Susano's, stuff like that, but usually not that great of a god. Athena is going in A. Athena does not have a great passive. She has a very mediocre dash. She's a very mediocre 3. She's a very mediocre, but she has a great 2 and a great 4, so a great taunt and a great ultimate. Her ultimate is just unparalleled. I mean, no other support in the game has a global ult like she does. It's instant, 30% damage mitigation. Her level 1's fine with her. If you level her 3, you can clear camps. She's not got the strongest laning phase, but the mid-game objective thing, where she was the weakest, is now kind of gone. It's now a bit more of a pick kind of game. So she's definitely got better, and her ult's fantastic for junglers looking for 1v1. And again, as I've already said before, junglers is the role that's winning games, because they have all the movement speed. They're the ones attacking. If you're jerky with the jungler and they make a play and you ult on them, let's say you're in duo and you ult in solo, you've guaranteed got a kill, provided safety for your jungler, and you got an assist. And they can just make a lot of plays with Athena. I think Athena's fantastic right now. A big Athena fan. She's very good. I recommend playing her if you're new to sport as well. Next up is Cerberus. Cerberus is in D. Cerberus passive is super outdated. It doesn't really do what you want it to do. It's kind of outdated because stuff like anchors in the game. His ult's very, very weak, very, very poor. His damage is lower. Its damage is lower than Atlas, is Kabrakan, Bacchus, Ares, Maui. The god needs some sort of buff. He's more of a solo laner, to be honest with you. I'll put him on here just for solos, just for sake, because you could play him you could play Cerberus against Terra and steal some heals, but really it's not doing much. The god's very weak. I wouldn't recommend playing Cerberus in support at all. Pardon me. Jing Chen. Jing Chen's going in. One of these two again, just a god that's got like a unique side to him, but nothing valuable enough to be considered good. I'll put him in B. Only because he's good against Double Hunter. Hunter's made it kind of good right now. He's good against the Sets, the Mercuries, these gods that are going to carry ranked games that you might be against. He can be Blink Rolling. He's not necessarily a Blink god, because you can jump in and all. He's 50-50 for me whether he's Blink or not. I'd say probably not, just go meta or something. Or Ang, get involved. He's a fine Cloak god. Good. He's a great Divine god. He's basically very similar to, again, like Bacchus, Atlas, Kabrakan, where you do a bunch of damage, you can force speeds, but you're basically soloing the enemy Hunter or Mage. Basically a very mediocre. I wouldn't say he's anything more than that. He's just good against Hunters, and that's where his strong point is. Yeah. Kuzenbo in C. Kuzenbo, again, has always been the same for me for the last 2 or 3 years, where... Well, Thorns got buffed last year, let's just say that, so he got better off that. Divine got buffed this year, which makes him better as well. If you can build something like Sentinels, Sentinels, Cloak, Pridwin Divine, you can start carrying games with Blink and or Blink and Thorns. But he is kind of a god that's kind of better in low-level games and then falls off near the top, just because people that are good won't hit you. So unless you literally save your 2 Thorns for a reactionary, like to a Yuhang 2 or something, that gets fired off and then you use your Thorns, you can't preemptively Thorns anything because people will just run away. He's good level 1, but not very good until level 20 at that point, until he's full build. Not enough damage compared to these other gods that are up here. Doesn't really force speeds. Can be Blink Reliant as well, because you can't dash in then all, you're too slow. Not a big fan of Kuzenbo. Next up is Terra. Terra is fantastic right now. Terra got the biggest buff in my opinion, due to the new map, because the walls are so small. You can do a sideways blockage on probably about 6-7 new spots across the map on either side. Terra is really good. She is quite hard to play outside of her ultimate. She is decent. She's bad level 1, but great level 3, great level 5. Scales very well late game. She's great with every single starter item. War Flag, Benevolence, Sentinels. Go with all of them. She doesn't need Blink. You can go Blink, but you don't need to. The problem with Terra is that Ank's quite strong. But again, that's just something you have to suck up and just hope that you don't counter your own team with. An item like Divine on Terra, for some reason, just 1 damage item on Terra, you can just get any backliner to 10% HP. If you ultimate 2, 3, dash through both, pop them, and pop back, insane damage. And Divine also procs Terra a lot faster now as well, which is great for Terra. Very solid god. Very fun as well. Ymir is going in S tier with the other 2 as well. Ymir is the most immobile support in the top 3, but he has got the highest pressure outside of Maui. Yeah, well, that's actually weird. Actually, that's kind of like, it's kind of like a triangle. Like, all of these gods have pressure into each other. Like, for example, like, they all do very well pressure in their own different ways. Ymir's very good at buff clear, very good at invading, but he's very immobile. But if you're playing with your team, he has the best engage of any support here, which is a wall. I mean, if the enemy team wants to Phantom Shell it, they can do, but then the wall comes down, and then 12 seconds later, the wall comes back up again. Ymir's just a sick god right now. Yeah, you should build him selfishly if you can. Like, he's not a cloak god either, so Thebes into Spirit's Robe, good idea. But very, very strong god. S tier for sure. I mean, I'm trying to think about any ways I can explain it. He's just a strong god. Simply it. And then the last god? The last guardian will be Sylvanas as well. Sylvanas going in S tier. Due to the map change, supports have a lack of purpose in regards to objectives. Now, this goes for Ymir too, so they both go together. Okay, so just imagine Ymir and Sylvanas here. Why are they in S compared to last year? They're a little bit lower down. Because there's not as much map play going on because they remove cups and scorpions, pyro change, etc., milking. Gods that are immobile aren't forced to path aggressively to play the map. Like Sylvanas, in most games in ranked, if you sit in dual lane for 15 minutes, okay, you'll put your ADC down 2 levels, but you'll get the tower and you won't ever die. And then late game, you're a good god. Like mid game, late game, Sylvanas is very good. If you get one pull through any wall, you get a good ultimate. You can just win fights. So mobile sports do just get better with this buff because they are less susceptible to being killed in the jungle. Now, you are more susceptible to being killed in lane, but less in the jungle. So it's a trade-off, basically. But Sylvanas is a great lane god. I mean, his 2v2 is fantastic with the ranged autos. Level 1's great with the prot shred. Level 5, you have a great kill on the enemy ADC if you get the pull. He's not blink reliant either, similar to Ymir. That's why, in my opinion, he's up there with S tier. Not great into Ank, immobile, like I said, but again, great pressure that kind of covers up for that. So I'm a big fan of Sylvanas right now. Anyway, that is the tier list done for Guardians, I believe. I honestly think I have definitely forgotten one. Hopefully, I think I have forgotten one, but I'm not checking. That's the Guardian bit over. If you want to stay, I'm going to give like a short 5-second break or something. I want to be very careful when I say this. I play a lot of weird stuff, so I'm not going to put too many weird things in there, but I think there are a few interesting changes to Season 10 that make more stuff viable. Number 1, Prophetic Cloak is a lot better on gods with aggressive ranged poke, which warriors do fantastic and so do mages. They can be built by all classes. Number 2 is they gave Benevolence, a new start called Heroism, a new finish called Heroism. It's great for late game. They also buffed War Flag, which means early aggressive gods can get rewarded more. They made Shards, which mean you can go Carpe Shard, which is the one that trades, just steals 20 of each prots from the enemy. That is fantastic. That's great for brawling 2v2 level 3, which warriors are usually better than guardians at. So stuff like that. Just want to throw that out there. So that's the reason why I'm doing this. Now the number 1 change, apart from all that, is Binding is in the game. So Binding used to be a magical only item with magical power on it and prots and MP5. Now it's a tier 3 item, 2.7 kit, 2,700 gold, 40 of each prot. I think 300 HP, and it shreds 5 base prots plus 1 for every level you are. So late game it's shredding 25 prots, which is very, very valuable. Now last year that did start at the start of the prot shred, but it's very effective basically. It scales well late game, it's good early game. When you get it around level 7, that's still 12 prot shred. That's still a tier 3 item prot shred worth compared to Jotuns and Divine and stuff. So that's why we're talking about Divine, about Binding. So that's why Horus is in there. The only other gods that I think are good with Binding, or that get better with Binding, are gods similar to Eset would float. If you're thinking about mages only, she'd start floating around here. Eset's decent with Binding. So is Nox. Again, long range CC that procs Binding is fine. Baron, these 3 gods, again, a lot different style than the normal Guardians, but they're completely valid. You can also build Loners on these 3 as well. Loners being strong with Cloak being strong. A lot of mitigation, a lot of prots. Very greedy, but if you get to late game, my word, they are strong. Another Binding one. Again, I might get a bit of hate for this, but I'm going to say it. I really do think on her support as a similar style to Horus, where you shred the enemy's frontline as enemy frontline's prots. Horus 2 shreds 30 of each prots, 30 physical prots. On her auto, that doesn't put him in danger, shreds 20. His 6-second AoE slow procs Binding. How is that not good? So anyway, that's why I'm saying on her, maybe give it a go with a double hunter, for example, just something like that. The honorable mentions then, I guess, apart from that, would be gods like Shiva and Fenrir. Just because Shiva, if you go the full cooldown build, there should be a video I put out recently, a Shiva YouTube. If you build the guide, build the build that I put on the guide, or build the build I did in the rank game, I promise you this god is strong late game. With an item like Brawlers or Binding, you do a lot of damage to carries. It is insane how much damage you do. Shiva's really good if you can get to late game and just engage first. And then Fenrir got a nice little buff on his 2. I'm not saying he's the best god in the game, but he's always been viable. Not like Saket's dead now in support because of the scaling changes. Fenrir just has Pridwin in his ult, which is always a good combo. And his 2 just got 25% attack speed, so you can take more trades with junglers and ADCs if you want than before. And that's pretty much the most. Those are the best supports. I mean, those are all I would value. There is troll picks like Anubis, but we're not going to get onto that. I don't think like those being played. But yeah, if you think any other supports should be spoken about, or you want any other opinions, then put like a comment down below or something. But I think for now, this is what I'm feeling. Obviously, these gods are not rated correctly. I've not had enough games to decide whether Baron's up here. He isn't up there, but I've not had enough games. But I think if you're not going to play Guardians, have a look at these 6 gods. Maybe on her the least, just unless you're a higher rank, because you might get flamed for it. But Eset, Nox, Baron, Shiva, those 4 especially, very strong right now. And they've all got very cool, unique styles you can play. That's the guide over, though. Thanks for watching. I hope that was educational. That lasted a lot longer than I thought it would. But hopefully it went over everything appropriately. And yeah, let me know if you have any problems with what I said, and I'll see you in the next video.